Here we go. We're coming through. Looks like we're coming through. Let us know how we're sounding, guys out there. Thank you so much. We're back. 52 episodes. End of the year, season finale. How are you doing, good sir? Thank you for joining me tonight.
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me again.
Glad to have you here. We're it's wrapping up, and we'll be doing an anniversary show next week. Next week. It'll be after the first episode of season 2, but it'll be a year in review following that episode. And of course, Gums, you're more than welcome to participate. We'll be expecting you if it works out with your schedule, of course. But
Well,
we've got
if
we
you
got
want me,
interesting.
I'll come down.
That'll be great. How was the holiday for you, sir? How was your Christmas with your family and all that stuff? Was it enjoyable?
It was very nice. It was a Merry Christmas, belated Merry Christmas to everyone in the chat, everyone that watched this. It's a belated Merry Christmas to you. It was very good. It was quiet, or Happy Hanukkah, if that's your thing.
Sure. Thank you.
And it was enjoyable. It was nice to be with the family and chill out and just be that whole American idea of Christmas, that kind of thing.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right, yeah.
Bit chill. It was my birthday yesterday as well, so I turned 41 yesterday.
Yes, congratulations, sir, and happy belated. 41, that's a good number. It's one away from the meaning of life, so there you go.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, that's what I thought about it. So, I actually chose to let the chat know, right? I actually chose this because it was my birthday yesterday to do the last one, because I missed the first one and the first 3 actually. But this has been a good series, a good season, and season 2 is going to be even better.
Oh, yeah. So for those that are curious with regards to what screenplays we'll be reviewing for next season, well, I did a post because we draw mostly from the blacklist, but every once in a while there's some other type of script out there. But blacklist dropped while I was back in LA, and I spent some time going over all of the log lines. There's a lot of scripts this year, over 80 if I'm not mistaken. And so we got a great selection of potentially great and terrible scripts to review for next season. And if you want to see what those might be, consider joining the Patreon. You can sign up for 1 week for free. And if you enjoy the content there, you can stick around. For any support is always appreciated, but not required. Just having you guys listening to the show, on whatever platform you can, is the goal here. And with that being said, Gums, let's jump in because we got a script this week. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week for episode 52, Gums 1983, back again, sir. We've got... I know some people might get a little cringy, and you're more than welcome to express that. But we have a biopic this week. It's a sports biopic, kind of like Madden. We started with Madden, sports biopic, ending sports biopic. Sports was a big year for scripts for 2024. Well, 2023, but in 2024. So we've got one here. The script is called Our Man in Miami. It's from last year's Blacklist, placed 31st. With only 12 votes, and it's written by Ozzy Inguanzo. Gums, you wanted to read the logline? Please share with the audience the logline for this biopic.
So, I can't do it in my best movie voice, of course not. So, a Miami construction contractor transforms into a notorious sports agent where he hatches a high-stakes scheme to steal Fidel Castro's most prized assets, Cuban baseball players for the New York Yankees. This is based on a wild, true story.
Well done, sir. The synopsis, as you said, based on a true story, Our Man in Miami chronicles the audacious journey of Joe Cubas, a family man harboring dreams of opulence, who daringly allies with an old friend, Yankee scout Rudy Santin. Together, they embark on a mission to liberate Livan Hernandez and other Cuban baseball maestros from the island's confines, smuggling them into America as free agents. This high stakes gamble not only challenges the very fabric of international sports law, but also risks everything Joe holds dear: his family, his future, and the safety of the players in a world where freedom is the ultimate prize. So this is a script that had one heck of an opening.
It's a very good opening, right? But I was going to prefix it right now. Right, as a Scotsman, baseball is basically rounders for very fucking expensive people. That's it.
That's quite all right.
That's it. That's it. That's it. Right. And I enjoyed. We'll discuss it, but
yeah,
I'm going to prefix it now. So let's get the chat going. Let's everybody give me an L. L in the chat for me. I don't mind. I don't care. Right.
But
the chat isn't relevant to me.
But that's okay, sir, because I mean, sometimes a great story can hit an audience that it's not necessarily targeted for. And the question we're going to be discussing today: is this, a grand slam or a no hitter? That's the question, right? So, since you already expressed your opinion on your experience with baseball, share your first few pages of it. First, your thoughts on the first few pages of Our Man in Miami.
When I started reading it, I thought it was very good. It was I like how they started it, and then it was jumping between different things. There was a cut. There was a background cut to so many years ago. There was different cuts.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of lost me in a wee sense, but I kind of get to the same, who as we're talking about here, the main character, his plot armor.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of like, if it not as many cuts, maybe naturally kind of slid into the past, nice, but the way they cut it was a montage every time. Obviously, it's an 80s movie. So everybody needs a montage, but I have thoughts, and I'll give you them shortly.
Sure. So the script sort of starts out with Livan Hernandez, who is a Cuban baseball player. His older brother, Orlando, is probably one of the best pitchers in the world. This is set in the early to mid 1990s, so it is a period piece of sorts, even though for gentlemen like you and me, 1990s feels like it was a couple of months ago, but it's actually a couple of decades, almost more so now. So we have something that seems like Livan is very nervous. He has apprehensions. He's got this pen from a Tokyo hotel, but I don't know if he's actually in Tokyo or not. It's a little confusing on the location exactly. But he opens up the pen, and inside is a little piece of paper, very spy-like stuff, and he unravels a note. It's got a phone number, and it's got an asterisk 007. And that
got me straight away. Sorry, that.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, right, but James Bond 007. 007 is James Bond, right? James Bond is either Scottish because he's written by a Scotsman. He's actually based on Christopher Lee in real life. He's also based on his cousin who was SIS at the same time in World War II. So that's James Bond, right? And I saw 007 and I went, the first thing I've got here with question marks is 007 WTF.
Yeah, I mean it's all about this. Well, what is he doing? Well, he's not really a spy for the government, but he is trying to extradite, or extract would be probably a better term, but extract someone from Cuba into the United States. And so this number goes to Joe Cubas, who is described as kind of like late 30s, kind of portly, husky type of Cuban American, who is in a really cheap motel, and he's gets on the pager, the little signal from the phone, and he's off into a janky looking van, and he's across like what I think is like a street. Like, again, some of the descriptions here are very good, and some of them are kind of poor. So we're not sure if he's across like at one point he's in like a Walmart parking lot, and another point he's listening to Toby Robbins inspiration stuff. We then do jump back to 2 years earlier, and so the narrative is a little kind of messed up. But the way that it's kind of set up is that Levon Hernandez just has to cross this street and hop into a minivan, and he is a free man and then a free agent for baseball. But as he's making his way across the street, it looks like a semi-automatic shipping truck comes by, and you're led to believe that it beamed him, right between the eyes, so to speak. Because right as it's coming in, we cut back to a couple of years earlier. We find out, well, how did Joe get to this point where he's encouraging a Cuban national to defect from his country and play for the Major League Baseball team? And we find out we actually don't see him really at his job. We just know he's working for his father-in-law. He's married to a beautiful woman who loves him dearly. He's got two great kids, and they're not well off, but they're making do. And on top of that, they're making do by basically putting their kids through private school in Miami, which is quite pricey in the 90s. But
that's pricey normally anyway, isn't it? Really, let's be honest.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's this other chap. There's this other chap named Rudy Santine, who's also Cuban American, but he's part of he's a scouting director for the New York Yankees, specifically looking for Latin American players. And one of their biggest obstacles is that all the best players are in Cuba, and of course, Cuba doesn't play really with the rest of America or the world when it comes to baseball. With some rare exceptions. And they're talking about this other player that did defect not too years earlier by just basically not getting on a plane and outwitting the Fidel Castro's security. And he's this big hitter, big player, and Steinberg, who is owner of the Yankees, he's basically saying, I would pay $2 million to get this guy, but because the way that initial player got asylum into the United States, there's a legal restriction that prevents him from being able to have a bidder. And this is something that is kind of hurting the scouting process for baseball players and for sports agents. Not a lot of sports agents want to represent players that are only making, say, $215,000 a year, even though they're a star MVP on the team. And when Steinberger doesn't like how Santine has failed to sign or bring anyone out of Cuba to the Yankees, he ends up breaking his gift, which is a box of very expensive Cuban cigars. Now, remind you guys, this is the 90s. There was a big trade embargo on Cuba at the time. And so, you destroy a box of Cuban cigars. That's anywhere from, on the cheap side, it's a few hundred, and on the expensive side, it's a few $1,000s. And, of course, one of Santine's colleagues, named Gordon Blakely, says, "Hey, how did you manage to get those in here? Aren't those legal?" It's like, "Yeah, I got a friend. There's a way to get them through. They're legal to come directly from Cuba, but not if they come through Mexico." And that gives him this bright idea. Oh, if we can get these guys out of Cuba, but not directly to the United States, but go to another country, they get a work visa there, then they can be a free agent to the MLB, and then they can have those multi-million-dollar contracts. However, there's no way for Santine to do that. He himself, because he's a scouter, he can't go plucking people out, and he also can't be coordinating with agents. Agents have to present their talent to the scouters, and the scouters have to make an assessment on the merits of that talent. And the screenplay does actually a pretty solid job explaining this. It does it very, very quickly. And how we get Santine and Joe Cubas together is that they are actually high school friends, and they meet up at a 20-year reunion. And the only reason that Santine is there is because he knows Joe is the type of guy that could help him secure these players. And that is the start of our premise, is that Joe, who's a contractor, he knows how to negotiate deals in construction. Of course, Santine says it's kind of like the same thing with baseball. I don't know how true that is. But the ask is, I mean, this is supposedly based on a true story. So the ask is basically that this, like, essentially unknown person, this nobody in Miami, is going to find his way to Cuba and try and seduce Cuban baseball players to defect the country and come to the United States by way of another country and make millions of dollars playing baseball. And of course, Joe finds out that he gets a nice commission on that as an agent, but he's not an agency. And Santine says, don't worry, I'll set up an agency for you. And all you have to do is just make some trips out there, build the relationships, and convince them to step off Cuban soil and get a work visa or request asylum from any country, Mexico or South that isn't the United States, so that we can pluck them up from here and give them a lucrative contract. And he finds out, and at this point here, like, Joe is the type of character who he's envious of the parents of his daughter's friends, because he picks up his daughters from their friend's house. It's this beautiful mansion with a pool, and he's got this.
He wants the American dream.
Yeah, he has his own vision of what the American dream is, and his wife Maria tells him that he's, at this point, he is already living the American dream, and there is a through line of that theme throughout this story. So after that little brief summary, Gums, just what were your thoughts going on at this point when he's getting pitched, when Joe's getting pitched the idea and he wants to take it? What was going through your head?
I kind of got lost a wee bit through it in terms of the jump backs, the forward and back.
Mm-hmm.
But I sort of felt empathy for Joe. Like, let's be honest, you're an immigrant to America in the late 80s, early 90s. Do you know what I mean? You want the American dream, let's be honest. Everybody does when they go to America, because America. And I felt bad for him, because in a sense he's looking for the best for his wife, his family. He wants to provide them with the best, but he's not doing it in the right way, because he's got a good job, pays well, obviously he's got his house, his kids and whatnot, and his wife, but he wants more. So in that sense, it's a bit selfish in that respect. Do you know what I mean? But he wants more, not necessarily for him and his, wife or children or anything such as that. But I enjoyed that part of the writing. I enjoyed that part of the script. I thought it was quite nice, because it wasn't jumping about. It wasn't, it wasn't like anything like, oh no, we need to go cut to black or do a montage, because obviously it's the 80s, so everybody gets a montage.
I mean, yeah, this definitely has a montage in it, but it follows a pretty, I mean, for a biopic, it follows a fairly easy to track story with when it's staying focused on each scene, which is kind of like the default. But I mean, you've got essentially this TV model type of thing where, we're going to start at like this intense moment, and then we're going to end it right before the climax, and then we're going to take you earlier, and we're going to kind of build up towards that interaction again. This was done with like Mission Impossible 3. It was done with the first Sonic movie. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of that style, but what I shared with you in this is that, yeah, I'm empathetic to Joe, because he, for all intents and purposes, he's living the American dream. He's got everything, but his idea or perception of the American dream, I think, is more with regards to the advertising of how at least the United States in the 80s and 90s kind of showcase what is the American dream. Well, it's big, it's wealth, it's lavishness, it's all this stuff that's kind of superficial. But when you're growing up in America, when you're actually living there, the dream is really just the stability, being able to have that freedom to build a family, to get a job. It's not this pie in the sky, out of reach aspect. It's actually a very reachable thing, but some people have different tiers of what they pursue. And when you're
Yes.
advertising only the top tier, everybody thinks that that's what they got to do, and instead of just realizing, no, it's whatever's the best fit for your life.
Yep.
And it's not always the grass is greener on the other side. Sometimes
Well,
it's like my grass is green. I've got to make sure I keep it green. Like that's the American. At least that's my understanding of the American dream.
right. Well, you got to think as well, right? So sorry, I don't mean to interrupt,
No, go right ahead,
Doctor.
please.
Right, but they actually clearly state in it as Reaganomics.
Hmm.
The, okay, fine,
Well, the
Reaganomics.
Reaganomics was basically the a quote from Wall Street from the 1980s: "Greed is good." Like that's what it was, and that is something that
Reduction in
Joe
taxes,
and
promotion of the unrestricted free market activity.
that's one part of
That's
it. Yep.
that's Reaganomics. Well, 101, like for the common man,
Hmm.
is if you're earning, in the 80s, let's be honest, if you're earning what, 50 grand a year, that's a lot of money. You're not paying that much tax. You're not paying that much tax. You love Reagan, so Reaganomics. Do you know what I mean?
And,
That's the
and
way I took it
and it's
in
under
that
the
sense.
premise. It's under the premise that if you're making that much money, you're spending at least half of that on things you want, which injects into
Correct.
the economy. What we saw in the 80s is not everyone that was like that, making that much money, was actually spending that much. But that's a whole different story. Here, Joe is of the time where he's like, yeah, it's got to be lavish house. It's got to be, um, great cars, lots of money, plane trips all over the world on a whim. That's what he wants for himself, and it's for his family. But to your point, it's not really about just making it better for his family as if his family's struggling. It's he wants to show off to people. Like that is his character
Yep.
flaw. He wants to show off how great he is, how good he is based on his wealth, not based on his values. And he and Maria, they get into a couple of fights over this because she's just like, she loves Joe. She is not embarrassed by the fact that he works for her father because it's a stable job, and even though she does believe in him, she doesn't always believe some of his schemes that he has done in the past, which is trying to get rich quick. And
Yep.
and she calls him out on this, and of course he's bothered by it, but he has something legit for the first time. He's got this independent baseball agency to represent players. And he's got a deal with Centene, who is basically saying, like, if you can get us one of these players, we can offer anywhere between $2 and $8 million for them, and then you get your 10%, which is a lot of money for that.
Of course
And
it is. Of course it is.
and the way that Joe looks at it is like, it's an investment. Okay, if I invest X amount of dollars in myself to get these players to defect and come on over, it's going to have this huge return. And he's seeing the end game more than he's seeing like the journey to get there. And Maria, when she finds out about this, is number one, upset, but number two, also realizes that this is something he could pull off. And while he gets the leads and he knows who to target and who to get, and he's super excited. He's like, okay, the only thing that's going to stink for me is that I got to leave home for a couple of weeks at a time, and I'm not going to see you all. And of course, he has his way. Him and his wife have his way with each other in the garage/laundry room while the kids are at school before he goes. He
As one does.
watches Rocky 4 before he departs, even though his kids want to see Mrs. Doubtfire,
As one does.
as one does. And then we get this great kind of setup, which is that he goes to Cuba and he has no clue what he's really doing there.
Yeah. I'm going to break the fourth wall.
Go for it.
Right. So, in the script, we'll come to it later on. When you're ready. So, when you talk about honorabilia,
Mm-hmm.
I'll break the fourth wall then. Right.
Okay.
But I like that. I like the point where he's like, do you know what? I'm just a Joe, any man. Let's go do it. Like, you know what I mean? Fuck about find out. Let's find out. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I'd do the exact same. You would do the exact same, sir. Anybody in the chat would do the exact same for the family. They'd be like, look, if I could go make some money, you know what I mean? Like some good money, like money, we're going to do it. We're going to go make that money how we make that money is irrelevant. We just make that money. And I like that idea where, his wife's like, look, you've got a stable job. Like you're like we're stable. Like we are perfectly fine here. But why are you doing this? It's like, well, woman, leave me alone. Let me go there. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of idea. Like he's still got that like 80s American idea in his head. Like he wants to be like kind of like RoboCop, all that kind of nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? He wants to be like buy that for $1. And
he wants that flexibility. Like that's his whole thing. Is he wants that flexibility. He wants to be able to show off to his friends, but at the same time, he's also thinking about his kids. Like it's when he's first talking with his daughters when he picks them up from a friend's house. It's not, hey, I wish we had this. It's more like, soon we'll get a pool and you can invite your friends over too. Like that, he was thinking about just reciprocating that type of thing for his kids, which is kind of nice, right? Because he's basically saying like, yeah, I want to make sure you guys have a better future.
absolutely.
But his motivations for it are kind of split. And when he gets to Cuba, he doesn't, all he knows is that he's got to find the players, but he doesn't know how to go about that. He's kind of, passing notes and watching people from afar, kind of looking creepy. And obviously the players on the teams in Cuba, they pick up that he's there for scouting, but they just don't trust him. And this is part of where the story kind of makes a weird sidestep, because we're about 25 pages in, and then we get introduced to Tom Cronin, who's in his 50s, and he's buying baseball cards in Cuba from people that are selling black market items, but these technically aren't black market. Like they're just well-preserved baseball cards that were available before the embargo that haven't been able to travel, and he manages to get them for, a couple of bucks here, like $10-20 here, and then he brings them back to the United States and sells them for $35,000 because they're near perfect condition. Early between 1905 and 1960s baseball cards, which go for a mint if they're well kept, and that's what he travels to Cuba for. And while he's doing this, he's also picking up that Joe is here messing around, and these two stories do eventually converge together. But what ends up happening is Joe, we do go into a montage, and Joe is he's talking to
montage.
Yeah, he's talking to Orlando and Levon, and he's trying to convince them to defect, but Orlando is we're led to believe that Orlando is a diehard communist, loyal to Castro, won't do anything, has a family here. And the other part, too, is as Joe is going to all these other players that have great potential, they all have the same excuse. I can't leave my family. I can't. I've got a wife. I've got kids. I can't leave them. If I do, Castro will punish them or do something horrible, most likely, to make their lives suffer while I'm living up in the United States. That's not right. That's not what they're about. And so as he is, for months go on of him just trying to get these deals secured and get them to say yes, Santine and the New York Yankees are getting kind of fed up with Joe, because the plan, like the plan to get them over for those millions of dollars is lockstep. It's easy done. The problem isn't that. The problem is the fact that they just don't want to go for fear or whatever. And this has been
the families isn't usually the
this
Cubans don't want to go because fear the family that will leave because the Americans will take all of them.
Oh, exactly.
They'll just take him.
Exactly, like because he's not. This is the other part of the negotiation, which I was thinking, like at the time. Well, if the obstacle is family, then you have to incentivize and say, well, we'll get your whole family out with you in exchange for this, because that's how you do it. Like if that's your one obstacle, but Joe never thinks of that. He's just like, no, you got to. We can get them later. Once you'll be a big star, you can use that to get them later. And he doesn't even like push that type of angle as much. But what ends up happening is he's gone for months. He's been doing this for months, gone for weeks at a time every month. Finally returns home, and Maria is just upset with him because he has spent thousands of dollars of his own money trying to recruit these players, and they are broke. And he has one last shot in Japan, where the Cuban team that Levon and Orlando Hernandez are playing, they're playing in Japan, and that's his opportunity to try and get them. And he needs $16,000 to go there. And I'm thinking 16 grand in early to mid 1990s for Japan. That is
a lot of money.
That is a good 10 times more expensive than I think it would be. Because all you need is a basic hotel and a plane ticket, and you should be able to do that for under $3,000 US back in the mid 90s. But he wants 16. I'm thinking
absolutely easily.
And I'm wondering, like, is he going to? He shouldn't be going to lavish hotels at this point, because that's. I mean, that was just kind of weird. But that may be the true part of the story. It may just be a number thrown in there to bring up some drama and tension, because there's this setup that's done with Santine and Joe when they talk about this venture, and that is Joe cannot tell his cousin Iggy that he's doing this, because Iggy,
I mean, he's a psycho, that's why.
Iggy is an ex-criminal who landed a plane of drugs on a private road sometime back, and he got away by the skin of his teeth. And he as one does, and he doesn't want that baggage to interfere with this job. But because Joe has been pretty unsuccessful at this point, and Maria is telling him he is not going anymore because they're broke, he needs to go back to work full time. He's in a rut. He needs that $16,000.
You know what I love about that one point?
Yeah.
Was Iggy's wife.
Oh,
she's
Teresa?
Like, look, Teresa. She's like, look, I know what you're doing. Basically, stop being a bitch and get on with it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we haven't gotten to that part yet.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Don't take the Michael out of my man, and let's get some money. You know what I mean? Let's get some paper.
What we get? We don't get this on screen. We get this implied through certain actions. Is that we find out that since Iggy got with his wife Teresa, he's actually been more on the straight and narrow. I mean, he still dabbles with some tumultuous things, but nowhere near the level that he did before. Like, he's got his son with the vinyl bag of foreign currency to get exchanged, and we're like, how do you get that currency? Don't ask. But he also knows certain people in various embassies, and he knows about getting visas and stuff. But so Joe, out of desperation, when he finds out that Maria is not going to let him go anymore, he reaches out to Iggy and he says, I need $16,000 to go to Japan because this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to take. Yep. And Iggy does a very skeevy thing. He says, well, if I'm giving you this money, then then I own 50% of your agency. And we split it 50-50. And Joe, of course, doesn't want to do that. And Iggy's all, indignant because of that. And we got this nice little drama. But eventually Joe agrees. And that's when Iggy invites himself, like, I'm going there too. I'm not just going to give you the money. We're going together to do this. And then all of a sudden, when Joe goes back home, he tells Maria, like, yeah, I was talking with Iggy. He bought a timeshare. He wants all of us to go for a week to check it out before they secure this sale. And of course, Maria's like, I don't want to go to your family's thing. You go without me. And he's like, okay, cool, great. I got the week off. I can go to Japan. She will never know. Then all of a sudden, the phone rings. He goes to the answering machine, and it's Iggy talking about how his wife wants to go on this thing. And so he quickly grabs the phone right before he spills the bean. And then you have this little joke. It's like, what? I thought I called your cell phone. It's like, no, you called the landline, you idiot. And
see, this is the thing, right? See, when I read that part, right, I went, if you look back on every single other thing, I went, see, if you did this right, it could be a dark comedy. With the appropriate actors and the appropriate writing, this could be a very, very good dark comedy. If you look at it that way, like, everything's kind of happening in a kind of falling down.
Well, for the first half, yeah, you could probably justify that. But this is all kind of a setup. Because this has got more of a tone similar to the Ricky Valens story of La Bamba way back when with Lou Diamond Phillips. That's kind of like the tone the script is kind of going for. Because you've got, some dark elements, but you've got some seated-in jokes here and there. This one on the phone is basically, it's Joe and Iggy trying to say, like, no, your wife can't come to Japan. It's not a vacation, it's us trying to make a deal. And, of course, Teresa gets on the phone. She's like, this is what's going to happen. Either you let me come with you guys to Japan, or I'm telling Maria that your guys are going to Japan. Yep. And he's just like, well, then I'll see you in Japan. So this $16,000 has now got a slightly higher price tag associated with it, but they're out in Japan. They do manage to actually get Levon on a one-on-one essentially, and they basically say,
Yep.
"Listen, this is how we're going to do it. This is what you need. All you got to do is say yes, and we walk out of here, and you're a free man." And then
Yep.
Orlando comes in, and then he just kind of lambasts, reads them the riot act, saying, "No, we're not leaving Cuba. We're not doing any of this. Get out of here. Bye." And this is happening not just in front of Joe and Iggy. It's also happening in front of Santine, and it's also happening in front of Gordon Blakely of the New York Yankees. And so from their perspective, they're like, great, this sports agent who just popped out of nowhere, who managed to get us this close, can't even close a deal. We're done with him. It's over. And of course, Joe is like devastated. He can't believe this. Like, holy crap. All this money spent, nothing in return. He manages to get back on the phone with Santini. He's telling him, like, listen.
Biggest thing,
Yeah, go ahead.
the biggest thing that they wrapped up in the 80s, 90s, and obviously the 90s now, and whatever it's called, because I'm Gen X, is the Japanese love a karaoke.
Yeah.
And that's fabulous. Everybody knows that. Every film in Japan that's not an action movie or a Marvel movie, has a man singing in a karaoke, and everybody likes it, right? And I loved it. And also, I did actually decipher on the script what the Japanese script was.
Oh, yeah.
So in the, well, if you join the Patreon
Well, you can see a
and
page.
look at the script,
Yeah, you can see the pages. Yep.
right, you can see all the script.
Mhm.
It says on, the page, in the Warriors Code, there is no surrender.
Right.
So that's what it means. You know the bits at the top when we're going down towards, when we're in Japan, we're
Mhm.
heading down towards the different parts where obviously playing baseball and whatnot.
Yeah.
And every time there's one at the top, in the Warriors Code, there is no surrender. See, that'd be good to put that on the screen for normal people to look at it and go, right, I get that. Right, so
Well, I think they tried to do that because Survivor has the song, and they quote it in the script as in the Warriors Code, there's no
Yes.
surrender, though his
Yes.
body says stop, his spirit cries never.
Yes.
So you've got that in there. It's a little bit more of a subtlety thing. That's kind of like for the if you know type of crowd, which is actually pretty cool. And then on top of that, you have Teresa, the Iggy's wife, is the one that's doing the karaoke. And I did not know what song she was singing until afterwards. They said, "Oh, it's the Full House theme song." I'm like, that's a song at karaoke, which is weird.
Japanese sing all songs on karaoke. If you've never been to Japan, sir, you better take your fine ass out there.
Oh, I've had a few
And they will
experiences,
make
but
you
I've only
sing all sorts of songs.
I've had a few experiences. I've never heard those types TGIF songs, so to speak. I've heard stuff that I've heard Perry Cuomo at at Japanese karaoke. I've not heard anything from. I know I've heard the theme song to Family Matters or any other.
I've heard Fortunate Son sung perfectly by a Japanese man.
Cool. So
And I'm not
so
American,
after we get
and neither are you.
yeah, so after we get past those the karaoke bar, the blowout that Orlando Hernandez had in front of everybody, Santine and Joe are on the phone, and Joe is saying like he's trying to convince him that he can do this, and Santine is like, I don't think we can go any further at this point. This is just not going to happen if we can't get this deal closed, and you should be able to close it. It looks like we're barking up the wrong tree. And then of course call waiting comes in. He clicks over and it's his wife. She's like, "Hey, how's it going over there?" And he's just like, "Well, it's with my family. I'm just on the other line. Let me get back to you in a second." And he clicks over to the other line, and instead of saying, "Hey, I'm back," to get confirmation of who he's talking to, he just blurts in this huge thing about being in Japan and what he's done. And then of course we get a pregnant pause, and he hasn't properly switched over the call waiting, and it's his wife saying, "It's still me. Don't bother coming home." And I'm just like, well, that's not quite a cliche, but it's very, very close to one where you have call
Yes.
waiting back in the day when it's a new thing and you never said, "Hey, it's me." Like that's where
Like,
you're like
do
taking
you remember?
phone etiquette back in
Do
the
you
day.
remember? Do you remember, Doctor? Right, phoning your good lady's house when you were a wee guy, and her dad answered the phone, and you hung up, and you phoned back straight away, and it because he was on the phone doing, *69 to find out who you were, and you left a call waiting saying, "Can you phone me back later on?" That's how I felt. You know what I mean? Obviously, being a child in the 80s, that was like, I like that. I understand what he's saying.
Hmm.
I understand it personally.
I
But
remember the call waiting stuff in the days before, where you'd have to hit the hang up button once, like, or just tap it to switch over until they had the phones that actually had the transfer button on. But I remember when we got it for the very first time, both my parents instructed to myself and my sister, and they said, before you continue any call, always confirm who you're talking to because you never know if someone will be on the line. And the reason we got these instructions is because when they were installing those lines in our neighborhood, we had a bunch of cross telephones lines. So sometimes you'd pick up the phone and you'd be interrupting someone else's conversation down the road. And you're like, well, you don't want to do that. So that's why you always verify.
there's a movie straight away. There's a movie straight away. Let's write it. Let's make money. Let's go. Come on.
Oh, there's hundreds of movies and sitcom shows that do that. But like this one here, it kind of just falls to the same part where his own impatience, his
Yeah,
own
absolutely.
eagerness caused him not to pay attention. He gets kicked out of the house. Where does he stay? He has to live on the futon over at Iggy's. And while he's trying to secure this deal, this is where Tom Cronin reappears. And he's been gone for many pages. But he
Yep.
reappears and he's like, I picked out what you're doing, Joe, and I can help you. And in order for me to help you, I want 50% of the commission. So now Joe is splitting 50% of the agency with Iggy, and now he's splitting 50% of his own commission with Tom because for some strange reason, Tom knows how to get these guys to trust him because that is Joe's biggest obstacle. Is for some strange reason, Joe just cannot build a relationship with these players on trust. It's all kind of
Mm-hmm.
factored in on the money type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So this is
Mm-hmm.
basically where they managed to reach back out to Levon, and they do so with a very beautiful blonde woman who hands him a hotel pen and says the instructions are inside the pen, and if you want to do this, all you gotta do is dial the number. And that takes us back to the start of this of the script where he's dashing across the street, and instead of him getting hit by the truck, it misses him, but he does fall down and a shoe falls off. But he manages to grab his shoe, get across, get into the
Prince.
van, and everything is hunky dory and good. And then Orlando shows up, and he's like saying, "Yeah, I'm kind of with you too. The only reason I had that outburst earlier is because one of the team's assistant coaches was in the bar as well, and if he saw us being chummy with you, he would tell his manager, which would then tell the owner, which would be Fidel Castro, and everything would just go to hell in a handbag." So he's like, he had to maintain the ruse, and this is where we have Levon and Orlando kind of getting into a little bit of a debate because Levon wants to go, but Orlando can't, not without his family. He's got a wife and two kids. He's like, I'm not going, no matter what. And things are getting kind of tight, and there's also Cuban security officers that have managed to hunt them down, and so they're on their way to go. And Orlando, hugs his brother goodbye and says, I can't do it. I'm sorry. Bye-bye. And then he leaves. And Levon is taken away. He's got a legitimate visa, work visa, for I think Croatia, if I'm not mistaken. And he manages to get signed with he gets pitched towards the New York Yankees, but at this point, Steinbrenner said, "No, I'm not even going to explore these
Yep.
players anymore. You're
Which I
all on
think
your
was
own."
quite strange.
Yeah,
I'm not going to interrupt you, sorry, sir.
no, go for it. Yeah,
But
please.
I find it quite strange where he's fully aware of what's happening, obviously, in Cuba. He's fully aware of what's going on. He's no daft. He's paid, well, he asked for 16 grand. They said no. An owner's going to say, why is some random person wanting $16,000 off me? in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, to go and
Go to
do
Japan, yeah.
Tokyo, that kind of thing. And I personally think that he just decided to have a conscience and say, no, I'm not signing these guys that are literally, let's be honest, human trafficked.
I mean, that's one way of putting it. The other part is they're fleeing an oppressive nation in exchange for playing baseball. I mean, listen, it is a deal. It's done consensually. That's the other part too. Is
Of
like
course,
they're choosing it to do it, which is why it doesn't quite qualify for that. But it definitely uses a lot of the similar tactics. And someone's going out there, they're making arrangements, they're trying to get the person to come with them. The only difference is that this is more like direct to the individual as opposed to a snatch and grab, and you're doing this whether you like it or not. There's always that choice. And that's one of the things I kind of dug with this part of the story with Levon is that, yeah, they're saying we really want you to do this. There's a lot more life to be lived outside of Cuba if you come with us.
Yep.
And it definitely sounds like a too good to be true dream, but it's also these guys, even though they're desperate to get him to come with them to the United States, they're still emphasizing that the choice still has to be yours. Like, if you want to turn back, you got to turn back now. We can't do this any later. This is the only opportunity you can seize. And that's the deciding factor when it came between Levon and Orlando. Is Orlando's like, I can't make that sacrifice. I cannot leave my wife and kids. I'm sorry. And then Levon not having a wife and kids, only leaving behind his brother, hard for him, but he's able to do it. And Steinbrenner was just upset that deals couldn't be made in the amount of months that have been elapsed since then. He cleans house at Yankee Stadium with only Gordon Blakely surviving. And so that Santine is no longer a Latin scout for the Yankees, so he's off doing something else. We don't go back to him for quite a while. And now it's Joe, with this baseball player as his only client, and he's trying to get them. And of course,
try to get as much money as he can.
And so he showcases Levon at one of the scout meetings. I don't know how he managed to work that out, but he did. And Gordon Blakely is there, and so he's getting into a bidding war between New York and the Marylands, and New York ends up offering a bigger sum. We don't know what the number is, but Joe decides not to take it, and instead signs Levon to the Marylands for like $7 million. And this kind of opens a floodgate where now Joe is the go-to guy to get Cuban baseball players. And him and Tom and Iggy are facilitating all the players to come on over. This is where we go into another big montage where Joe, he's kind of separated from his wife, but he's got a fancy car, a beautiful house. He's able to pick up his kids from their friend's house in a very expensive Lamborghini. and
a Ferrari. It was a Ferrari.
Oh, a Ferrari. Sorry, a Ferrari.
And they don't fit. They have to sit in the front seat, all of them.
Yeah, they have to sit together in the front seat, which is very safe driving.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The kids are not too good to die with the rest of the family. But
why not?
But he's now built this infrastructure. He's got a couple of assistants. He's negotiating through Iggy's people to get work visas, which cost a lot of money. These expenses he's of course deducting from his commission with his agents, and then Iggy finds out that it's not the standard 10%, it's 25%, and he gets very upset because he's being cut out. He's only getting 50% of that 10%, but his cousin's taking more. This causes a huge blowout where you think Iggy and Tom are now going to wander off and do their own thing, and Joe is going to be left holding the bag, trying to maintain all his client list, especially considering the fact that as Levon is entering the World Series with 97, I think is the 97 World Series for the Marylands, he hasn't been talking to his agent at all, Joe. So it feels like, from Levon's perspective, Joe doesn't care about him anymore.
But you've got to bear in mind, in the part of the script, Joe's not interested in talking to him. Joe's only interested in making money.
Mm-hmm.
So once the money's done, the 6, 7, whatever figures, Joe's like, my job's done. I don't care what you do. You go do what you need to do. So that leads
Yeah.
into what you're talking about the new song.
Oh yeah. Basically, as soon as he gets the deal, the way it's established is that as soon as Joe kind of gets these players over, once they're signed, he's no longer worried about their career. He's not doing what a good agent should do, which is finding out that the teams are there for the best interest of the players they represent, getting the best deals, make sure there's no negotiations of contracts, make sure the terms of the contracts are being upheld, etc., etc. Joe's not doing any of that. And so, yeah, Iggy and Tom decide, okay, screw this. We're going to leave Joe. We're going to do our own thing. And what ends up happening is Iggy ends up going to Cuba for the first time. And his passport's been flagged for the crime, which was alluded to earlier in the script. And so he gets arrested. Tom gets discharged of sorts. And he reaches out to Joe begging him to help Iggy. And Joe's like, no matter how much money I have, there's no way I'm going to be able to help him at this point. It's done. And of course, Tom says, if I can get you Orlando Hernandez, can you try and help everybody out on him? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's go do that. And this starts the next part, which is Levon wins the World Series for the Marlins, and Orlando has been barred from playing baseball in Cuba. He's been pulled out of the Olympic team, and on top of that, he had to pirate the signal to watch his little brother win the World Series for him. And this was a kind of a beautiful moment in the script because he feels so proud of him, but he also feels so mortified because he's not able to, hug his brother, congratulate him, and he's here with his family who he wishes he could take away from Cuba to the United States.
That's one of the things I took away from the script was that, family is a big thing in terms of the script.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it for the start all the way right the way through. The ending, well, if you want to know the ending, join the Patreon. But I liked it. I liked that part where he was like, it was a bit of shame as well. I felt kind of shame for him. Not necessarily he was in shame, but I felt shame for him.
Is that because he had the opportunity earlier and he didn't take it, and now he's got the regret
Correct.
part? Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what the writer is trying to get across here. And this part here is like, this is where the story actually picked up for me because it's got way more focus. Because we have the undiscovered territory of entering in baseball sports agents to get basically Cuban players out of the country and to the MLB. And it's done in a way where it doesn't feel grossly technical, but it's also it's kind of off focus. It's just kind of, they feel like individual moments that don't quite tether together as fluidly. But as soon as we get that first World Series win, and Orlando makes a commitment like he is going to escape Cuba and he's going to do this, and he reaches out to one of the intermediaries that knows Tom and says, find me a way to get off this island so that I can go play, congratulate my brother, and then try and get my family out. And Tom sets up all the stuff. Joe financially backs it. They have a plan. Fidel Castro, for the first time in decades, has allowed for Christmas to be properly celebrated in Cuba, which means the roads are going to be completely ice emptied for that night because people are going to be spending time with their families, and this is their perfect opportunity to get out. And so they have to drive across Havana. They got to get into one fishing boat out in the middle of nowhere on an island where they'll be picked up by a speedboat. That'll take them straight to Miami. And Orlando is given from his daughter this medallion that she found, and it's supposed to bring good luck. And this is something he holds on for the rest of his journey because now we're just following him getting from point A to point B. And it's very simply done, and it's quite decent. And it's not just Orlando; it's Orlando and 3 other guys who are not baseball players. They're just trying to get a better life as well. And what ends up happening is that the FBI and INS arrest Tom as he's trying to negotiate the final payment for the speedboat to go pick these guys up. So now we have this nice little story beat where Orlando and this crew of guys escaping Cuba are expecting a speedboat that's not going to come. And when Tom finally gets out of jail the following morning and he calls Joe in a panic, he's like, listen, this is what's happening right now. Like it was a sting from INS and the FBI. Nobody's going to pick them up. We got to get these guys. And we have to make sure it's the U.S. Coast Guard, because if it's any other country in the region, they're going to be sent back to Cuba. And so Joe makes some calls, and the Coast Guard sends out a plane, and it flies over the island. But the guys there, Orlando and his friends, his new friends, they don't know who that belongs to that plane, so they hide. And so the U.S. Coast Guard thinks, okay, there's nobody there. The island's empty. They manage to fashion together a raft, and then they get picked up by a speedboat, but it's the Caribbean Coast Guard. It's not the U.S. Coast Guard, and their treaty with Cuba is that those guys go home.
So, for everyone, it's 23 degrees 01.0 north, 79 32 30.0 degrees west.
Yeah, longitude, latitude coordinates. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's basically, like, they don't say specifically where they are in regards to the island name. They're like, these are just the coordinates that you'll find them at. Go pick them up. They've been captured by, I mean, not captured, but rescued of sorts by the Caribbeans. And one of their immigration liaisons calls out to Joe and Tom and says, hey, listen, this guy says he's supposed to be going to the United States, but of course we have this treaty deal with Cuba. They have to go home, but you get to talk to him. And now it's basically like, okay, no amount of grease in the wheels, no bribes, nothing is going to get these guys out there. So all they're doing now is using bureaucratic logistics to kind of delay that transport while they find a way to get out there. And Joe ends up going to the Caribbean, and he manages to secure a visa for Orlando. And Orlando says, I can't go with you unless you can get 3 more visas for these people here. And this is the difficult thing for Joe, because he needs this deal. Because if he can get Orlando, he himself will kind of be reinvigorated. He'll have his team back. He'll be the top baseball agent star for Cuban players in America and the world. And he's desperate for this. And he doesn't know what to do. And even his assistant is having trouble trying to get additional visas. And with just the one there, he's like, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to just get me a copy of the visas, fax them to me, and we'll see what happens there. They get faxed. They're not signed. They're not stamped. He signs them. He mocks a fake stamp on there, which works miraculously as they get on the jet to leave. And now it's a ticking clock in logistics, where can his assistant get the proper visas before their plane lands? And it comes at great expense. I think Joe spends all the cash that's on his person and this very expensive watch that he bought in order to get Hernandez and these 3 guys on an airplane. They land, and then Joe comes up with the ideas like, we're going to fudge your age a little bit, Orlando, because you're like your early 30s. That's considered, old man age in baseball. But if you can still throw the heat,
really ancient.
I know. So, but if you can still throw the heat, we can get you into the sweet spot. And that's basically what he does. He lies. He says the guy's 28, but he's really like 32, 33. He's throwing at the same type of scouting play that his brother did the year earlier. And a bunch of guys are looking at the radar machines to track how fast he's throwing, but only one guy is actually staring at his form, and that's Gordon Blakely of the New York Yankees. And what ends up happening is, like, he's the only one biting over at Orlando, and Joe manages to get him to pay through the nose, and then he does this whole quote, like, show me the money, because of the Jerry Maguire comparisons that are being made by the press.
Oh.
And this gets us up to the point where he does get signed. Orlando does get signed to the Yankees, and this brings them to the '98 World Series. And at this point here, this is where we get to our climax of the story. Is that for the past season, for some strange reason, especially after Levon and Orlando get kind of reunited again, and they share each other accolades and how much they miss each other, and how Orlando wants to see his family again. Joe has this heel turn where he's like, I'm going to try and spend the next year
Club.
getting Orlando's family out of Cuba.
Yep.
And he gets very, very close, but as they enter the first game of the World Series, the Yankees, and they have some issues here, and you look like you have something to say, so I'm going to throw it to you, sir.
But you need to join the Patreon. Find out.
No, you don't have. I mean, you can, or you can just send me a message on the X there or an email, and I'll be happy to share it with you at this point. But yes, that is basically it. It's
Join the
like
Patreon. No.
they have 4 games to figure out will they be able to get his family out of Cuba, and this ties into what the theme of the script is about family, and what it means to Orlando, what it means to Levon, what it means to Joe, and I will say stylistically it's pretty neat. Characters are very well defined. Their voices do stand out. So yeah, those are my general comments of the script. Gums, anything you want to add before we get to the final verdict, so to speak?
No thing I want to add is thank you very much for everyone that has started from the start of season 1 to now, the end of season 1. Season 2 is going to be brilliant. We've got a lot of scripts. We're going to have a good fun. Bit of fun, bit of banter. Let's do it.
Yeah.
In terms of this particular script, listen, Major League Baseball is rounders for lots of very expensive people. But I enjoyed it. I understand the points. We discussed beforehand. I enjoyed your points. Would I go and see it?
Yeah. Would you go and see a movie like this?
No.
No?
Well, it's not got Madonna in it, so it's not going to be like, that kind of a baseball movie. So, no. I wouldn't. But I understand why people would.
Right. So
I
then
would give it a green light.
Oh, you give it a green light, but you yourself would be like, yeah, green light for good script, but not my cup of tea type of deal?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, great.
I understand why, there's 300 million Americans in America.
Yeah.
They're going to enjoy that. That kind of thing, where America, we're bringing Cubans to America to make them better, and, have that American life. I did see a bit of Jerry Maguire in it. I did see a bit of Wolf of Wall Street as well, in terms of
like energy and style. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry, there you go, sir.
No, please keep going. Sorry. I hiccuped a little bit. I tried to pass it off as an M. It didn't work.
I did see a bit of Wolf of Wall Street and that kind of thing in it. Would I go and see it? Yes, if it was a dark comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be brilliant as a dark comedy. In terms of internally dark, kind of action dark movie type thing. Do I like communists? No.
I don't think anyone does. That's as they shouldn't be liked. Yeah.
Let's get that right now. This is the end of Scripts and Saturdays season 1. We will see yous in season 2.
All right.
Starting when, sir?
Yeah, we're actually season 2 starts next week. But before we get to that, so you would greenlight the story on the merits of the script, even though it's outside of your taste, because you do see a market for it. I'm in a very similar boat. I don't hate baseball. I do enjoy it as a occasional pastime. Nowhere near as big as hockey for me. And even then, I have not been doing a good job.
The Mighty Ducks. Yeah. The Mighty Ducks is the tits. I mean, the Flying V has never been beaten in film unless somebody rewrites it. The Flying V is the tits.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, I would greenlight this also because I think it's a better biopic than what we saw with last week's script of Kazan and what we've seen in other attempts earlier. Because while it does jump around, it does focus on the main goal of, okay, Act 1 and first half of Act 2, can we get these guys to want to leave the country? Okay, yes, we can. Act 2, oh, well, we've had some great success over this, but we also have a falling out point because of greed gets in the way instead of family. And then Act 3 is, okay, in order to change gears a little bit, we're going to go towards family, and we're going to try and get, do right by these players that we're making all this money off of, that they're making a lot of money in America for. So it has a fairly solid structure, and it's an easy to follow through line. I do have my quips with regards to a couple of the flashbacks unnecessarily thrown in there, but once we get to Orlando's story, we don't get those flashbacks anymore. It goes straight in, point A to B to C.
Now you're giving far too much away.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to know, they join the Patreon.
Thank you constantly for keep pushing that.
But anyway, I'm going to just shout out the note. I do apologise.
It's quite
Doctor,
all right.
I didn't mean to annoy you, right?
You're not annoying.
But let's just give a shout out to the absolute chat right now. On the 29th of December for me, it's 28th for news, 29th of December for me. So we're going to get a shout out to Adega, obviously. Adega. We're going to give one out to Lombardi. We're going to give one out to me, apparently. Darren M. We're going to give one out to Read by Nature, obviously. We're going to give one out to 52 movies a year.
That's good old Jake. Yeah, one of our co-hosts. Great guy.
There we go, man. Just give a shout out. Emily Kruger. Hail. Hail you, Emily. Hail you. The dead man. Hello, SD. SD sees you. He says hello. There we go, right? And then we go Darren M. We go Read by Nature again. And then I'm going to butcher this, so it didn't hit me. Darius.
Oh, Darius.
Ah, there we go, right. So there we go. He said it right, not me. I'm Scottish,
okay.
so
you're
my
quite fine.
comprehension of English language is very limited. But anyway, right, that's why I shout everybody, because this is the last one.
The last one of the year, yes.
Why not shout everybody that's been here to the start, especially Digger, especially like guys like Read by Nature, especially everybody, man. Do you know what I mean? Let's give it to the chat. Thank you very much for everyone that's came and watched. These are things that we generally just put together. Script sends it out. I literally forgot I was doing this tonight. I started reading this script at 6:00 p.m. GMT. And I was on the mic with the doctor at 11:30. Absolutely terrified. Not knowing what the name of fuck I'm going to say, but we managed to get through it.
Well, the thing is, you had some good thoughts, and I will say this: you had I liked your mindset on this. You said you basically, we got a double green light for two different reasons, but both on the merits of the fact that even though this wasn't your taste, you couldn't deny that it was a good script. And I think with a few tweaks, it would be definitely a heartwarming type of story. It can go into that dark comedy aspect of it, or it could at least play around with the tone a little bit better. But it hits its points. Number one, baseball movies have a solid following too. So, and then when you're also throwing in the based on a true story, where I think the Yankees had 3 consecutive wins. Yeah,
I snuggled my daughter. I snuggled my daughter's arse in the 80s, right? I'm not interested. That's it. The simple as that, right? I seen my daughter's arse in the 80s when I was a wee guy. That's it. You know what I mean? If they build it, they will come. Well, literally, we'll leave that there. You know, we'll leave that for the, what's it called? The OnlyFans one.
Let's not go near there.
Oh, generally, thank you very much, chat, for coming. Honestly, it's brilliant to see everybody. Happy New Year to everyone that comes. Happy New Year to everybody, obviously, in the chat. Happy New Year to everybody that watches. It's been a pleasure. I will be back in the new year if the doctor decides that he needs a bit of chaos and normality.
There we go. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us this evening. Gums, thank you so much for promoting the Patreon to all the listeners out there. Greatly appreciated,
Join the
but
Patreon,
not
man.
required.
Join the Patreon.
And then on top of that, yes, we'll be back next week for season 2, episode 53 of Scripts on Saturdays. And following that weekend, we'll be doing a little round table year in review, where Gums will be here along with a couple other of the co-hosts, where we get to actually talk about what we thought and what we remember from the scripts that we read over the last year. With that being said, I want to wish you all a wonderful Happy New Year. We'll see you next year. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.